Good evening, dear participants, and welcome to Professional Development Webinar 6, 5 Tips to Teaching Exams. And I'm happy to introduce our speaker today. Anna Tonkikh is a Cambridge University graduate. She has master's degree in education and she is Delta qualified specialist. Anna works as a director of studies at Linguagrad Language Academy, which is an English exam preparation center. Also, Anna coordinates, designs, develops, and teaches IELTS preparation courses, academic writing, critical thinking, and SAT courses, as well as short teacher training workshops, courses, and webinars. Thank you very much, Anna, for agreeing to present for us today. And I'm very happy that we also have speakers from Kazakhstan at our professional webinars. So I would like to remind the participants to unmute your cameras if you want to ask some questions. Anna, will you give them some special time for that, or how shall we manage the questions? Or you can also write questions in the chat if you want.
Well, I guess they could just write questions in the chat, and then we'll have a question and answer session at the end of the webinar.
Okay.
All right. So shall we start, or are we waiting for other people to join us?
Well, actually, we have already 16 participants. So and we started the recording of the webinar as usual, so we can start. And also, before we start, I would like to make 2 announcements. One of them is that if you want to be one of the speakers, please contact me as soon as possible, because our schedule of speakers is filling up very fast. Actually, all the spots are filled till July, and now we have a schedule of the webinars once in 3 weeks. So before we had once in a month, and maybe soon we will even change it for once in 2 weeks. And also, not all of the webinars will be recorded as before, because some of the speakers said that they have some unique information that they would like to share only with participants and would not like to be for it to be recorded. But I will inform you about that in our webinar emails. Okay, so Anna, you are welcome.
All right, wonderful. So let me just start my slides. All right. Okay, are you able to see my slides? I'm just checking. Yeah, all right, great. Okay, so this webinar is called 5 Tips to Teaching Exams. And my goal is to equip you with some valuable tips on how to make your exam teaching more efficient. So very quickly, I know that Yelena has already introduced me, but I'd like to get to know you a little better. So that'd be nice if you use the chat to provide me, to share with me the following information. Please use these stems to tell me a little bit about yourself. And this is what I'd like to tell you about me. I'm an EFL teacher. I work as a director of studies at Linguagrad Language Academy. Here's the picture of our school, and we are located in Pavlodar. I teach all levels and all ages and all types of courses, because I substitute for all the teachers who are sick or can't attend a class for some reason. And I specialize in teaching exam courses, different academic courses, and English for specific purposes classes. So that'd be great if you could also tell me who you are, where you're from, and what kinds of courses you teach. This will help me to answer your questions in a more tailored way. So we'll get straight to tips then. So my 5 tips are, let's start with the first one. The first tip is get certified. Basically what happens is exam preparation is a very responsible thing, and not every teacher is willing to take the responsibility. But sometimes they don't have a choice because their managers or teachers or who have high posts just tell them that it's their turn to teach. And very often teachers don't feel confident enough to teach such courses. So I often hear these questions from my students, and I've heard these questions asked in other courses. When students come to an exam preparation course, they have really high expectations. So this is what they ask you often. Have you taken the exam? What's your score? They'd like to know, like, who is teaching them, how experienced this teacher is. They want to know what your level of English is, and they want to have the teacher who has either the maximum level or the level which is definitely higher than their own level. So I know that many teachers and many schools, they have a requirement that if you are to teach a Cambridge course, you have to have this certificate. If you are to teach an IELTS course, you have to have a valid IELTS certificate. In my experience, students trust those teachers who are certified in the exam that they teach. However, this is not always possible. You should always understand that. If you can get certified, get, for example, a valid IELTS certificate, you might not get a valid certificate to certify that you have taken the Nazarbayev University Thinking Skills paper, because this is a new exam and it's just impossible to take it if you are not one of the future students. So, however, there should be ways to deal with that, because students still want you to be certified in a way. So the options for certifications would be, there would be two options. You can get an International English Exams certificate. So that would be a certificate, one of the Cambridge certificates. I don't know, I hope you are familiar with these abbreviations: Cambridge Advanced English Certificate, Cambridge Proficiency English Certificate, International English Language Testing System, TOEFL, and so on. Basically, whatever certificate, in addition to your teaching diploma, that could certify that your level of English is was assessed by a very well-known body entity like a Cambridge University or some other teaching university. And your second thing that you should be focusing on is professional development courses. There are lots of free opportunities out there. There are multiple webinars like this one, courses and MOOCs, massive open online courses that teachers may take or should take this would be the proof that they have the ability and the inside knowledge of the test. Let me give you a couple of more specific suggestions. One of the suggestions, I'll start with the IELTS course just because we are now in Kazakhstan and this course is in high demand, and every other student that comes to our school, for example, wants to get an IELTS certificate. So this is possibly right now is the most popular course in Kazakhstan. So one of the options is you could take the Inside IELTS course. It's on Future Learn, developed by Cambridge Assessment and British Council. This course is absolutely free, and you can get the certificate proving that you have taken the course. You could take the Teaching IELTS, a course by Interpress. It's a well-known international school here in Kazakhstan, and they deliver this course once or twice a year. Last time it's delivered about every 6 months. There is an online course called How to Teach IELTS. It could be found on Cambridge English website for teachers, or there is a course developed by me, Teach IELTS course, and there are also lots of other options out there. I could just demonstrate that this is true courses, that they really work. Let me just give me a second. I want to show you my browser. Just a second. So, are you able to see my browser? Okay, I hope you are. Okay, so for instance, this is the course on Future Learn, which is absolutely free. And here on Future Learn, you could take the course on IELTS or on teaching your subject in English, because any teaching course would prove that you have the knowledge which enables you to teach for this or that exam. This is an Interpress course, which is called Teaching IELTS. This is an old picture. One of my friends is here. And here are all the requirements. They also will provide you with the certificates. This course is not a cheap one. As far as I know, it was taught last time by an IELTS examiner. There is an online course. It's a 20-hour course, how to teach IELTS. Could be, it's very cheap and self-paced. It's delivered asynchronously, so you could spend as much time as you want studying for it. It gives a lot of inside knowledge about how the test is organized and what skills should be taught. So this course is designed specifically for teachers. Very nice one. I did it I don't know, about 4 or 5 years ago, and quite enjoyed it, even though I was experienced in teaching IELTS. This is the course developed by us, by the Grad Language Academy. If you're interested, you could take a look at it later. And so on. There are a couple of more options that are out there. So a couple of more suggestions. Of course, not all of you are interested in teaching IELTS, because there are lots of other exams. Recently, I've been teaching for Nazarbayev University a lot. Students who want to pass the Nazarbayev first year entrance test, critical thinking, SAT, just academic writing courses, and so on. Well, I have to say here that in such courses, there are several things that are impossible. For example, in order to teach some of these courses, you can't really take this test yourself. So it's not like IELTS. You can just get a valid certificate, because some of the exams are just tailored for specific universities and they don't have a certificate. But you should always remember that you are a teacher and you need to be looking at these exams from the teaching point of view, from the methodological point of view. So every exam focuses on academic English. So whatever courses focus on academic English would be really beneficial for you, because they will talk and equip you with knowledge and the sub skills involved in taking this or that test or examination. So for these purposes, I would suggest Coursera. It has a huge range of courses. I'll show you in a minute. Or different publishers' webinars. By publishers, I mean the course book writers that we all know, Macmillan, Oxford University Press, Cambridge University Press, Cengage Learning, and so on. They often have webinars by very experienced teachers or course book writers who talk about different skills involved in teaching for this or that exam. Of course, there are always various webinars and MOOCs, massive open online seminars and conferences. One of them that is running right now is American English webinar series. If you're not in Pavlodar, but you're still in Kazakhstan, in every American corner, in every city of Pavlodar, where American corners are, they are now running American English webinars, which are absolutely free for teachers. And some of the topics are actually devoted to teaching exam skills. And the beauty of it that you get to attend 6 different webinars, get to meet lots of interesting colleagues. And if you attend 4 out of 6 webinars, you get a certificate from American English Institute. And of course, you can just be here today or watch the recording of the CAST 5 tips to teaching exams and other similar webinars. Let me show you the Coursera page and show you what I meant by looking at academic English. So here is the Coursera page, and they have one section on learning English. Basically, any of these courses would be beneficial because this course would prove that you have the inside knowledge of a specific aspect of English language. For instance, if you are to teach somebody how to communicate effectively, this could be a nice course for you. If you are teaching any kind of writing in English, academic writing, which is involved basically in every English exam, this would be a nice course, English composition by Duke University. You might be just teaching, for instance, writing for university, writing for academic purposes, then this course would be very beneficial for you. The beauty of this is that all these courses are absolutely free, so you could just do as many as you want, and you only pay for them if you need to have a certificate, the actual piece of paper proving that you've done the course. If your employer or your students want to see the paper version, then it's not very expensive. Or if you're just doing this to feel more secure, to be more confident in what you're doing, then just do as many as would equip you with the necessary confidence. I've been teaching for a really long time, and I still just keep doing various courses to make sure I stay tuned on what's going on. That is all I had to say on my tip 1. Get certified. Just get some sort of certificate to prove that you are at a higher level than the students on your course. At this point, do we have any questions?
So, dear participants, please, if you have questions, you're welcome to answer. And also, Anna asked us to write some information using stamps she provided. So you're welcome to introduce yourself. So we have...
Great, we have Anastasia here, Maria, and Janna. Really nice to meet you all.
Anna, I have a question about becoming IELTS examiner. Do you have any information about that? And is it possible for a non-native language, English language speaker to apply for becoming IELTS examiner?
Yes, I do have information on that. It's quite a lot of information. Do you mind if we discuss it at the end of the session?
Okay, of course.
But I can provide you with very detailed answer on that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, let's move on then. So the first tip was to get certified, get some piece of paper proving that you are smarter than your students, simply put. All right, the second tip, teach, not test. Basically, many inexperienced teachers fall into the trap of testing when it comes to teaching for exam. Instead of teaching the students the skills, they just keep testing the skills involved in the test by doing lots of exam papers and having this idea of the more sample tests I do, the better they become. This is also known as negative backwash in methodological terms. Negative backwash means teaching solely for the test. And this is not a very good thing. To avoid that, you should always remember that learners are active participants. They are not passive recipients of the knowledge. So they may often bring something to the course. They already have some previous knowledge, because just total beginner students never come to exam courses of English. They are they already have elementary, pre-intermediate, intermediate levels, and you should account for that. And many of the things do not need to be taught for them, but many need to be checked if they really know what they say they know. Next, you need to include awareness raising activities in your tests. What is awareness raising? It means that you need to provide rubrics training. It's not just enough to say that, oh, here's the exam task, for example, write an essay. So write the essay on this topic. No, that is never enough. You need to provide students with full instructions involved and full criteria of assessment involved in this task. Learning about the criteria of assessment, learning about the things that examiners expect you to do, this, and that, gives them confidence in what you are doing, and it actually makes you a better teacher. You need to develop sub skills and exam strategies. It's not just, okay, the more tests we do in class, the better we become. It's not that a group of students come to your class, just sit down and you pass out some past papers and you try to, and you go over them. Of course not. This is, even if you use the past papers, which is a good thing, you need to be going over and talking the exam strategies over with them, with your students. And of course, any exam is taken under timed conditions. So the more training you provide under timed conditions, the better your students are prepared to deal with the time stress. This could be done through mock tests, regular timing in class, when you just set the time limit and you never break it. If you tell to your students that they have 2 minutes to complete the task, it means that after 2 minutes you stop the activity and you check. And you teach them some time-saving strategies. These would all depend on the type of the exam that you teach for. At the end of the session, I'll show you some of the things that we do in class. I'll show you some short videos. So in Teach Not Test, I would like to highlight several things, some do's and don'ts. Basically, I'm just saying this because I often get students who come when I suggest different activities in class, some of them who have attended other courses, other teachers, they often say, they look at the text, reading text, and they say, oh, I know this text comes from this book, I've done it, and I don't want to do it. And when I ask them, say, like, why do you think we shouldn't do it? They say, well, I've done all the practice tests. So it means that I shouldn't use any of the practice tests, and that always confuses me. So, and when I start asking them, they often say that, my previous teachers, they just gave us lots of reading tests and we did them in class and we checked the answers and we graded the papers and then we moved on to the next text. That is a very strange thing to do in class, because the reading tests students can do at home and they can grade them at home, because reading tests usually have clear answers. So they don't need a teacher to grade it. So I would never suggest to test reading in class. Instead, what you should do in class, you should focus on sub-skills involved. What is meant by sub-skills? This is teaching students to skim for general idea, to use the bottom-up processing and top-bottom processing, to scan for specific information in order to find the answers faster. You need to teach them fast reading techniques, test them on how fast they read, find flaws in their reading, and suggest strategies how to improve their reading speed. You need to teach them, not to just tell them, find the keyword, but you need to teach them how to find and select the keywords in order to enable them to answer the questions better and correctly. And depending on the test, it may involve different types of questions that we need to teach different strategies how to answer them. The same, very similar issue, I often hear from different teachers and students who struggle with listening. Because very often students have never received any help from their teachers, and they say, well, basically, the more I listen, the better I become. Or their teachers tell them, oh, just keep listening, and you'll get better, which is a very strange thing. I mean, I could keep listening to Chinese, and my Chinese would never become better because I don't speak any Chinese. So instead, again, you need to focus on sub skills involved. The amount of listening you do in class or outside of class would never affect the quality. So it should be about quality, not the quantity. So you need to focus on the sub skills involved. And instead of listening a lot, you could just focus on listening and taking notes effectively, so that students could then restructure the text from their notes. Or you could teach them to predict from context, because listening is always a very unfair skill to teach and test. Because in real life, when we speak and listen, we have a lot of extra clues. We have gestures, we have the facial expression of the speaker, and we always have an opportunity to ask the second time if we didn't hear something. In the test, we are stripped of these opportunities, and our responsibility as a teacher is to equip our students with some techniques that will compensate for the fact that you are unable to listen for the recording the second time. So that would be teaching them how to predict from context, how to distinguish between the words in the connected speech. So that would be teaching the features of connected speech, how the words are joined and linked together in the connected speech. Of course, we should possibly focus on the elements of pausing and intonation. Such things are called suprasegmental features of speech, because very often not the listening makes the exam difficult, not the text, and this is not the vocabulary that is involved, but the fact that students are unprepared to listen for just once. They are not prepared to compensate for the fact that there is no chance to see the speaker, and they are unprepared to be ready and how to react to when the speaker pauses or changes the intonation. So these are some few of the sub skills that could be involved. As for other skills, I mean, writing and speaking, in my experience, most these skills are often taught in class, because we can't teach a class without speaking to our students. However, these should also involve some exam strategy training and so on. So always remember that you are the teacher. You are not the student. So it's a good idea before you teach, when you design a course or start teaching a new course, go back to basics. Remember that once you studied methodology, and this methodology helped you to teach English, so the same methodology should equip you with teaching to exams for exam purposes. And always remember that you teach the language. You're not teaching the test. Even though the end of your work would be some very high cost test or very important test that students will take, you're still teaching them the language. So my suggestion would be always go back to basics. For instance, you see a picture here on the screen. This is the picture of our library at school. It's not very big, but it is tailored for teachers. It actually says for teaching IELTS. Here's a whole list of books, whole collection, and there is the different teaching resources and different more advanced courses, resources, which and our teachers always have access to these books. My suggestion is also to take a look at this series of the books called How To, and these are wonderful books because they focus on how to teach specific skills and specific sub-skills. It could be how to teach grammar, how to teach for exams, how to teach listening, and for some of you, these books will be very, very helpful. They're really up to date, and in many of the courses, I know that many of you in the previous webinar sessions asked about CELTA and Delta, and these books are always on the CELTA and Delta reading lists. So you will definitely benefit from reading them, and it will definitely change your look at change the way how you look at teaching and testing in an exam classroom. So this is my tip number 2, teach, not test. Moving on, I'd like to also focus on my third tip, tip number 3. In your exam class, you should make sure you balance the language and skills work. Basically, most of the English language exams, they focus on the 4 skills. We all know what these skills are, and they don't test the language explicitly. So they don't teach grammar and lexis and pronunciation explicitly. Instead, all of these things are built in the skills work. So they teach grammar, or they test the grammar in the writing test, and they check your ability to pronounce and understand the intonation in the listening and speaking test, and so on. So to account for that, we can't just keep focusing on the 4 skills for the test, like reading, writing, listening, and speaking. We should build in to the course some remedial language work. By remedial, I mean just working on students' mistakes. So if you, for instance, teaching, say, reading or whatever, it could be writing. You're teaching a writing skill for a specific paper, and you notice that some of your students struggle with the passives, then it makes sense to stop and teach passives, but maybe not the whole spectrum of the passive voice and not all the tenses involved. But for this specific work, for instance, students often need only to use present simple passive. So you could just stop and make sure that your class is very comfortable with the present simple passive. They might be super bad at future simple passive, but it shouldn't be of any of your concern because you could deal with it a little later. But for this specific task, this specific grammar feature is more than enough. Then it's a good idea to revise systems, and by systems I mean grammar, lexis, pronunciation, and functions, to integrate them into practice tests and into different practice tasks that are happening, that you're doing in the classroom. You could do that by just employing different teaching methods, such as task-based learning and guided discovery approach and test-teach test and lexical approach. Basically, stay tuned on what's going on in the ELT world. Very often exam skills are quite short and there is not enough class time to do with the lexis and grammar problems. So of course it would be a great thing if you assign most of this as homework. So deal with only really emergent language, with really problematic language in school, but then students do a lot of the extra consolidation work outside of class. This can only be possible if you if tip 3 goes together with my next tip 4, and the tip 4 is promote autonomy. Preparing for exam, even in a group or with a teacher, is still a very independent activity, and students should take their own responsibility for learning. They can't, by coming to a class, you should always let them know that they're not going to pass the exam just because you have a magic wand and you equip them with all the exam knowledge. They still need to work hard to get that knowledge from you. And nowadays it could be done much easier than when, for example, I was a student. Basically, I always tell my students that, yeah, I will do my best to prep you, but you should take responsibility for your learning. I will create lots of extra opportunities for you. And it's your responsibility to hold on to that opportunities. But of course, the teacher should be the one responsible for creating such opportunities. By these opportunities, I mean, set up a group email to assign tasks. It's a very easy thing to do. Nowadays, everybody has an email, and it will students will definitely benefit from getting an extra task, extra grammar task on the issue that came up in class, because you may not even plan something, but it comes up in class, and and maybe you don't have all the time in the world to stop and deal with this issue, but you could do some remedial work and then lots of extra practice homework, which could be easily assigned by just sending a group email, or set up a WhatsApp or Telegram group or any kind of instant messenger where all your students can be on one thing, communicating to each other, and this will also save a lot of your time, because instead of asking the same question, answering the same question over and over again to different people, you could just answer this question once to a group of people and have it written down, or I don't know, recorded down in a device, and all the students of your group, even if they miss the class, they still have access to it. And another suggestion is demo in class, and suggest apps to use outside of class. Nowadays, students are very good with technology. They like using all kinds of cool devices and different programs and applications. So if you suggest an app to practice vocabulary and show it in class and have an activity showing like, look how easy it is to match, I don't know, this difficult vocabulary to very colorful pictures. And they could just do it on the way to school or before they go to bed. And they will definitely appreciate the effort that you found this activity for them, you hand it into them, and that from then on, it's their responsibility to keep learning. I just want to share some of the resources of mine. For instance, in my classes, and I teach a lot of exam courses, I use Padlet. I'll show you in a minute what this is. I use it to set up writing homework tasks and to store different reference materials on the topic. My students have often noted that this is very useful, because after some time they forget what or they lose the material, and they could always access and print it out again. I use, for instance, Kahoot. It's a very interesting program to practice different exam strategies. I'll show you it to you in a minute. I use, for instance, Quizlet a lot to practice vocabulary and grammar, and all these things, Padlet, Kahoot, and Quizlet, they could all be accessed using a mobile phone. So nowadays everybody has a mobile phone, and if the home task is to learn, I don't know, 10 words for the test, my students would never say I'm not ready, because I always tell them, hey, you have your phone with you. You could just open it up and do it before the class, or after the class, or on the way to class. Another good thing is using Google Forms to conduct different needs analysis, collect different feedback, to perform diagnostic testing, to see at what level your students are and to tailor to their needs. And one of the things that is new to me, but I have already started using it, is Google Classroom. And by I have started using it, I mean, I have just started using it. I've only been on Google Classrooms for literally 2 days. I have set up only one course, and I'm now just today I introduced my students to it, and I really hope that this will enable my students to become more autonomous in their learning. I'd like to show you more specifically what these things are. So I don't want to be a kind of person who just says, oh yeah, this is how we do it, but not do it myself. I actually do all the things that I'm promoting. Just a second, sorry, that's a different. So I really hope you're able to to see. For instance, here's the Quizlet page that I'm using. This page is, you can see it's set up for our school. And for instance, this is the topic of describing the graph. And students are, we did it in class, just maybe once or twice, to show how this activity could be done. So I demoed it in class. This is a very cool task. For instance, students need to match the introduction to the text, and then the picture to the text it describes. And then students can access and do it at home. Some of them become so interested that they just go to them to search, and they search interesting things for them. So if they feel that they don't have enough vocabulary on the topic of environment, they just Googling environment and see what other teachers have developed. This website has a huge storage of different flashcards that you could practice. Then another thing I said, I use Kahoot in my classes. So this is basically the page. I create tasks, and then students need to have their mobile phones to answer questions. And then after doing such 2-3 minute activity in class, they often become really interested and start using Kahoot on their own. They often have this, I've noticed that most of the students have this on their mobile phones, this little app. And then, for instance, I use the Padlet, which looks like this, to assign different writing homeworks. So for instance, this is for my IELTS class. I assigned different types of graphs to my students, and I asked them to write introductions. And this is very convenient for me as well as for the student, because they are able to see not only their answer to the task, but also the answers of their peers. And they're not only able to see the mistakes of their own once the work is corrected, but they can also see what mistakes, what errors their course mates have made, and account for that, not to make such mistakes again. So as for the different needs analysis forms, again, just to prove that this is not just, I'm not just saying, I'm actually doing this. This is, for example, the IELTS needs analysis form that I often, once the new course starts, I ask students to complete this form. This questionnaire was designed by me, and it happens to be really, really helpful, because once students complete the questionnaires, the whole group completes, then I could just create, visualize the results and see that like the majority of this group are actually intermediate students. They view themselves as intermediate, and some of them view themselves as upper intermediate. But after the testing, it turns out that the whole class is closer to the pre-intermediate level, which tells me that their own self-evaluation is higher than the actual level that they have. And I need to account for that in class. It happens much faster by conducting a survey than by teaching through several months to understand this. I also use Google Forms to collect feedback. Just recently, my students have completed the course on thinking skills, and this course is quite new. I've only been teaching it for 2 years, and of course, I'd like to improve this course. So I asked my students to complete the questionnaire and to tell me what they think about the course, what things they enjoyed, and what I should keep doing, and what things they disliked and I need to possibly change or introduce new things to course. For example, I ask them how they view the course and what could be improved. And this proves really, really helpful. The final thing that I said, I've just recently started to use Google Classroom, which looks like this. It's a wonderful thing because basically you create topics, and then you could assign homework and add different extra tasks. Like my today's topic with students was describing process diagrams. And I've added the not only the worksheet that we had in class, but extra key points, extra handouts, extra tasks that where they could practice vocabulary if they feel that they don't have enough vocabulary to complete the task. We have done some remedial work in class on passive voice. But today I had some new students in class, and I could ask them if they still have questions. And if the answer would be yes, I would move on and add on some more tasks to this page. I believe that a Google Classroom will prove to be really, really helpful in what I'm doing, and hopefully it will turn out to be helpful in your teaching for exams. So basically, the proof that we are really doing what we say we're doing is, is right here. And I'd like to move on to the last tip. Make it fun. Teaching English, itself is a very creative job, which I really love, and I hope you do love the thing that you're doing. And teaching can always be made fun. Preparing for examination is already stressful enough. So I believe that a teacher should not create extra stress in class and keep reminding that you either prep for the course or you fail. I'm not supportive of this kind of behavior. Instead, I really believe that we should encourage our students and make learning engaging, interesting. There are so many opportunities for that right now. We could use internet and various videos and multimedia in our classroom. Nowadays, it's all widely available. We could introduce different elements of competition. Yes, it's true that examination preparation is very individual. And if you're teaching a group of students, the students could be at different levels. In my courses, very often students are at various levels, multi-level classrooms. So elements of competition actually make it beneficial because it saves teachers time on explanation, because students learn from each other. That is why group and pair work is really, really beneficial. Students could learn from each other, and they often feel ashamed to ask teacher a question on maybe some basic grammar, but they are not ashamed of asking this question to their classmates. Use board games, use timing devices, different sounds in class. This is the picture of our teacher's room, and just one of the shelves that we have. As you can see, we have lots of board games, and they're not just sitting there on the shelves. They're actually actively used in class. Even the twister game could be used in an exam class. Just use your imagination a little, and once in a while ask your students to take off their shoes, stand up on the twister, and once they put their right foot on the red circle, they should be speaking. Once their arm is or their hand is on the green circle, they should be writing, and so on. So it could always be made fun. And again, just to prove that I'm not just saying for the sake of saying, I'd like to show you a couple of elements of our lessons, things that we do in class. I hope that's fine with Elena. I see that she is nodding, so that, that is definitely fine with her. So
yeah, it's fine. I'm muted myself not to interfere.
Thank you, Yelena. So this is one video. This is one of the activities just to show how engaged students can be.
This is a snapshot of an IELTS speaking lesson at LinguaGrad Language Academy.
Here's a couple of more examples that I'd like to show. As I said, take advantage of the technology. Students love using technology in classrooms. So I often ask, for instance, to record what they're doing so that they could hear the first version of their speech, the last version of the speech, and after some time, if they save the recordings, they could hear if they have made any progress. Here's an example.
She's not to prepare questions for us yet to be well prepared for our exams. And it was very interesting, and sometimes it is students working on my students, and we can say that she's friendly because
so as you see, students are engaged, they're using their mobile phones, and they are going to listen to what they have recorded at home. As I said, elements of competition are really motivating for students. For just some time, it allows them to forget that they're actually prepping for a serious exam. But at the same time, the speaking opportunities are increased, and they're communicating with their peers, and they do their best not to let down the team. So here's one example.
three different types of exercise.
So as you see, competitions are something that students often enjoy in class. Another thing that we could do very often, time, as I said, is limited in the exams, and when we, do the revision work, it's a good idea to have working stations where students again work in teams or in groups and complete different tasks. So here's one example. So another example. Very often students don't do their homework for different reasons, because exam preparation could be an additional thing that they're doing. Homework is, of course, a very serious thing, but I do know that in some groups, students will never do their homework. So we have these funny punishments for them. As you see, even though the student is being punished for not doing his homework, everybody is smiling. And the next time, he or she would come prepared to class. Let me show you a couple of more examples, just a second. Here's one of my favorite activities because it's really easily conducted and it could be adapted to so many different topics.
Of Great Britain is, Elizabeth I was the second. So, in my limited experience, I would say that she has 2 grandsons, and however, I don't remember.
In this activity, the student is working on her speaking skills, and she is forced to use some linking devices. in groups, when you teach groups, very often students feel that they don't get enough individual speaking practice. So this could be a way of doing a lot of individual speaking practice, plus keep the whole class engaged, because they all want to contribute to make it more difficult for the person on the chair. Then there's one more example. Even really boring things, such as, I don't know, learning the vocabulary to describe trends. That's my personal least favorite activity. Could be made fun in class. In the one of the IELTS courses, my students struggled with the trends vocabulary, with words decrease, increase, and so on. So to make them learn the vocabularies is something we did in class. Upward trend. Downward trend. Peak. A peak. A low. So basically what I'm trying to say is that teaching for exam, it's not a kind of a heads down super serious activity. It is still a language lesson, and it could be made fun, and it could be made interesting for students. So all the things that I have talked about, these are the things that I constantly do in my classrooms, and they seem to be working because students seem to come back to classes, not giving up. So if we quickly revise the 5 tips, they would be, would you like to turn on your speakers and shout out what the tips were? Turn on the microphones, please. So tip 1 was?
Get certified.
Yes, get a certificate of something. Prove that you are smarter than your students.
Prove your level.
Yes. Tip 2.
Teach not the test the children, because we have to teach.
That's Julia speaking. Hi, Shumkelde.
Yeah, hi Anna.
Welcome. Thank you for joining us. All right. Tip number 3.
We should teach language as a whole, not separately.
Not just yes, teach, not test. One more.
Promote autonomy.
We shouldn't.
Right. Autonomy. Never forget that students are responsible for their learning. Okay. Anything else?
It should be fun.
Yeah, make
it should be fun.
Not all of it, but at least some elements of it could be made fun. And that is all I wanted to share with you today. I will happily answer any of the questions you may have. If we don't have enough time to deal with all the questions, here's my contact information. You can email me, write me on the website, or follow our Instagram page. The slides will be forwarded to Helena, and she will share all the information with you, so the links will be available.
And also I will provide you with the feedback form where you can ask your questions to the speaker.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
Yesterday I followed up with previous speaker.
Any kind of constructive feedback will be really appreciated. Thank you very much for your attention. So if you have any questions,
thank you, Anna.
I'll happily answer them. You're very welcome.
Thank you, Anna, very much for this interesting presentation. And as I think I've mentioned before that I have started an online course for teaching exams, how to pass IELTS and TOEFL. So the tips that you provided are very useful for me too. So I'm working on this course now, and I will be happy to use some tips you provided today. The information you provided today was very valuable for me.
You're very welcome. If I could, would you like me to answer the IELTS examiner question now?
Yeah. We still have a couple of minutes. Yeah.
anybody, you don't have to be a native speaker to become an IELTS examiner. Most of us, I guess, are non-native speakers here, and we all have a chance to become IELTS examiners. To do that, you should contact your local British Council organization. We have British Council Kazakhstan, and every 2 years or so, they actually spread out the word. They post it on the website, they post it on different social networks, the information that they're employing IELTS examiners. There is an application form which you complete and which states that you should have if I remember correctly, a minimum of 10 years of experience or 7 years of experience teaching adults. You have to be teaching adults. Of course, you complete the form where you answer various questions on on the aspects of confidentiality, because they value that a lot. Next stage, if they're satisfied with your application form, they would call you on Skype or on the mobile phone and conduct a phone or Skype interview with you. And an active IELTS examiner will ask you various questions. Again, most of them are on confidentiality issue, and they would ensure that your level of English is high enough. If you don't have a valid IELTS certificate, they will ask you to take the IELTS test at your own costs. By the way, you have to pay for it yourself. There should be a valid IELTS certificate which states that you have band 9. And by band 9, I mean 9 in all sections, especially in writing. I know this 100% because I applied to become an IELTS examiner about 2 years ago. And the only reason why I didn't pass, my overall score was 8.5. Mm-hmm. So I failed, and maybe I will apply the second time, but you have to have a vacancy for that. To me, in my experience, the application process is not very difficult, and I believe I still have the application form saved on my computer, so if you're interested, I could definitely forward them to you as an example of what they are going to be asking you. In my experience, the requirement of having IELTS band 9 is very unfair to non-native speakers, because native speakers are not required to take the IELTS.
I know. Do you remember Andy, our presenter during the third webinar? He has been IELTS examiner for many years, and I sometimes invite him to my workshop to role play real speaking IELTS procedure. Okay, thank you very much. I just wanted to double check with this band 9, because I just started thinking about that. And we have one more question. So could you share with writing tips or some approaches next time? So students find writing essays harder than other ones.
Question, Elena, thank you. I see the question. So this is common problem in my classrooms. When the new course started, students often complain that writing is not fun for them. So writing essays, how we can make it more interesting? Group writing activities. When you teach students to write maybe an essay sentence by sentence, which teaches them to keep the writing cohesive and coherent, because they have to build on the ideas of others. Group brainstorming is a beautiful activity. Creating mind maps together. By the way, for these purposes, again, you could use technology. Have you seen all these wonderful mind maps? Saying, I don't know, in different directions, wonderful, colorful words. This could be really easily created, because by just type into any of the browsers, any of the search engines, cloud making or something like that, making your own cloud. And there are lots of generators for that. Group writing activities, group brainstorming activities. Then another tip would be to always break down writing into sections. So if you are teaching a whole essay in one class, even if it's a 2-hour class, it's absolutely impossible. So that would be like teaching to write introductions for various types of essays, teaching to write different paragraphs, because a paragraph could be an opinion paragraph, a problem and solution paragraph, a comparison and contrast paragraph, and other paragraphs like that. We have delivered a course in academic writing in American Corner, Pavlodar. Hopefully soon the materials will be all available, and possibly they will be available on our website. So just keep following the website, and maybe you could just steal some ideas from there. Again, if I haven't answered your question well enough, Linura, I'm sorry if I've mispronounced your name, you could contact me and I can give you tips on what books can give you nice suggestions and nice activities to use in class.
Okay.
Yulia agrees with me. She says it should be taught gradually, so by breaking down into sections. Thank you, Yulia.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Anna, for very interesting presentation. And if you will have some more questions, so you're welcome to ask them in the feedback form that we will provide together with the recording of the webinar. And speaking about teaching, listening and not testing listening that you mentioned in your presentation, our next webinar will be on this topic on the 4th of April, if I'm not mistaken. So look forward for our emails that will notify about the time and the access to the webinar. And thank you very much for support. Today we have 27 participants together with the speaker and assistant. And so I think we are growing. So welcome, and you're welcome to share the links to access the webinar and the links for the recordings with your colleagues.
Thank you very much for these opportunities. See you around.
Yeah, and I'm really amazed with what you do. So so even in Kazakhstan, we have very advanced teachers. And one more comment. So I'm teaching here TOEFL and IELTS workshops at American English Institute. And frankly speaking, I think non-native language speakers are more confident in teaching exams because they are more focused here on teaching English, on teaching reading, writing, speaking, listening skills, but not teaching exams. And I agree with you that when we prepare to take IELTS or TOEFL, we should teach the language and not just train for the test.
True, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so thank you very much and have a good night, and I will see you soon in 3 weeks.